It's story time. I want to tell you a story. It's something that happened to me about a few weeks ago. I took my family in spring break to go to Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. And my family loves going there, loves the rides, loves the atmosphere. But my favorite part is over in California Adventure. There's a small place that deals with the art of animation. And as being an animation teacher, my favorite vacation is to go to a place with animation and be inspired by other artists. I went there, and my favorite thing to do is to look at all the artwork, the amazing artwork. And one thing, it's kind of a sickness. I collect the art of books. I have all of them. And my wife is starting to get to the point to forbid me from buying any more. And I went to one of the books, one of the newest art of books for the movie The Good Dinosaur. And I opened it up, looking to be inspired, and I see this drawing of a dinosaur, a T-Rex. And it did more than inspire me. It did time travel for me. It transcended me back to the late 90s, where I was in my classroom, where I met for the first time this 13-year-old boy who drew this exact same character thousands of times in my classroom. As I talked to him, he told me, "Mr. Sullivan, your class inspired me to go on and be an animator. And I want to go to the school called CalArts." Wow, a freshman. Knowing about CalArts, I was intrigued. I'm like, "Oh, CalArts? Why CalArts?" And he goes, "That's the Disney School of the Arts. It's where I want to learn how to be an animator." I was very impressed with that. Someone so young knowing about this school. And then he said, when I was talking with him, I go, "If you want to be an animator, what do you want to do with it?" And he goes, "I want to work at this company called Pixar." Now, that's not so strange now saying that with Pixar and how successful they are, but this is the late 90s. Pixar only had 2 films to date at this time, Toy Story and Bug's Life. And I figured, oh, this young man's interested in this new way of animating, computer animation. No, that wasn't it. Matter of fact, he hates computers. I said, "So why do you want to be there?" And he goes, "I want to go to the place because they make great stories." This young man knew the path that he wanted to take at such a young age, knew where to go, where he wanted to study, what he wanted to do, and where he wanted to work. Was very impressive. He's worked on everything from WALL-E, Up, Toy Story 3, Cars 2, Brave, Monsters University, and The Good Dinosaur. Back to present time, looking at that art book. That artwork that I was inspired by has come full circle. I was a teacher, the program that inspired a student, to where now that student is inspiring his former teacher. I'm proud to introduce to all of you someone I consider a family member, Sheldon High School K-9 alumni, a Pixar animator, a Pixar story artist, character designer, and also an amazing inspiration, Austin Madison.
Hey everybody. I feel like that's my time, right? That's good. I'm not going to beat that. Howdy, I'm Austin. Thanks for inviting me to this conference and taking the time to listen. So I do work at Pixar, and I did want to originally work at Pixar because, yeah, they tell great stories. And, you know, we've all gone to the group therapy session that is a Pixar film, right? You go in, you have your box of Kleenex, you know it's going to be an emotional roller coaster, and that's kind of what you sign up for. But once I was working for them, I realized that it's more than that. It's also an amazing culture. So when I was invited here today, I asked myself, what would I want to learn from a Pixar insider if I was you? And the answer is very apparent. So yes, you are all going to get a full look at the 2016 John Lasseter Hawaiian shirt collection. We will go extensively through each model. No, I would want to know, how do I foster that creative culture? That environment where people feel comfortable to be artists, especially in middle school, high school, whatever grade you may teach. You have a wide range of introverts to dysfunctionally extroverted people, or dysfunctionally extroverted people who are truly introverts and very afraid. So how do you create a culture where all those people can thrive and hopefully work together? So the keys to fostering a creative environment are, it needs to be fun, yet functional. It needs to be safe, yet challenging. It needs to be educational, yet experimental. You want to form bonds, but you don't want to get cliquey. We fell into that trap at Canine Studios a few times. You have to face the dilemma of deadlines. And finally, the last thing I'm going to be talking about today is, seriously, how do we get this thing to function? And that's when I'm going to give you the secret ingredient that ties the whole thing together. I could tell you that now, but I'm slotted for half an hour, so we're going to have to do this whole dog and pony show for 25 minutes. Then I'll give you the good stuff. Chapter 1, fun yet functional. So this is where I work. This is Pixar Animation Studios. The tree is to scale with that lamp. That is not trick photography. The lamp is 18 feet tall. If you're guessing it came from Australia, you are correct. That is Australian Fadesc lamp. That was their little thank you for the movie Finding Nemo. And it's one of those things where it came under a tarp, and everybody's like, cool, what's this, what's this? And they kind of unveiled it, and we're like, great. Where does that go? Okay, it just stays here. Great, great. This is the main atrium. This is Pixar's second building. So the first building, as Sean said, when they actually had their own first building, they'd only made probably just Listerine commercials at that point. So this was the building that Monsters, Inc. bought. And Steve Jobs was very involved with Pixar at the time, and very involved with the construction of this building. This building was actually renamed recently the Steve Jobs Building, right down to the bricks that were chosen. If you ever come and visit, there's a stone brick pizza oven that was designed specifically to Steve Jobs standards. So if you ever want a Steve Jobs pizza, come to Pixar and get that pizza. But the exciting thing that he wanted was that he realized that in a creative space, you need an open door policy. You need people to be mixing and kind of bumping into each other in the hall, and it can't be closed doors or cubicles. The tricky thing is, a lot of time artists want to just hold themselves away and work on their one thing, when really they need to be looking at the big picture and be getting involved with what everybody else is working on. So he designed the building after the human mind. If you look at the right side, all those hallways that are heading that way are the creative areas of Pixar. That's animation, character design, story. On the left side, you have all the technical aspects, technical directors, tools people, production assistants. And here in the center, this atrium is kind of our central nervous system. This is the only place with restrooms in the building, so you have to come out and bump into people. It's where the food is, it's where the tables are, they have foosball games, and it's great. It works totally well. It really does become this place where the two areas meet. Here's an example of one of the ways we use the atrium where we set up an art show. This was for the Totoro Forest Project, which was funding forestation in Japan. Everybody did art inspired by My Neighbor Totoro. And there we are. People are, when you go to an art auction at Pixar, it's kind of depressing, because you're like, oh, that's my buddy's artwork. Oh, I really want that. I'm gonna bid, X amount of dollars. And you're getting a little bidding war with your pals, and then 5 minutes before the auction's over, John Lasseter just comes in and just like, $1 million, $1 million, $1 million, and you can't get upset because it's for a good cause. You're like, oh, what was the point? So when they first moved into this building, it was totally empty, and I believe that they were coming out with, so they had worked on Monsters, Inc., so I think Finding Nemo was coming out at the time, and there was a lot of journalists that were coming through. They had all these empty halls with just like the bare minimum computers plugged in. So prod staff gave all the animators a bunch of money saying, look, you gotta go get cubicles, make this place look like it's functioning properly. Well, when you give animators a blank check, you don't get cubicles, you get sheds. And two-story sheds We call that one the Unabomber shed. There's actually a little place to sleep up there. You get castles and tiki rooms. They fully stocked a bar. Pixar now has about 8 fully functioning bars. We have pub crawls at the studio. It's difficult to see, but the best office, second best office at Pixar is that one in the lower left-hand corner. It's designed to look like the inside of an airplane that's crashed in the Amazon jungle. So there's those little tree branches are actually growing through the fuselage. It's disgusting. We were all making fun of him for spending so much money. Now whenever a celebrity gets a tour, that's where they go. Like, oh man, there goes Bill Nye. There goes Jim Carrey. This is the best office. So when Andrew Gordon moved into his office, he realized, has anybody seen the movie Being John Malkovich? This guy had a little crawl space. He had a little John Malkovich crawl space. And he decided, oh, well, I mean, when a Pixar animator sees a potential like this, you don't just let it go. So he built the 1966 Batman bookshelf with the Shakespearean bust. You push the button, and behind there is the Lucky 7 Lounge. And he has cameras set up, so it's got, a little blackjack table and, whiskey. And he has little monitors, so if the director's ever coming, he can seal up the Lucky 7 and get back to work before the director sees. So just wanted to get you thinking about how you can turn this into that. And it doesn't need to be a whole castle or a tiki room. Are there collages of inspirational artwork that you can be putting up? How can you make it messy enough that people don't feel like they can't act out or pin something up wherever they want, Art is a very impulsive act. And if the environment is too clean or too sterile, people don't feel like they can just pin up a piece of inspiration or jot something down on any piece of paper. And that's really what we want to do to facilitate that creativity. Chapter 2, safe yet challenging. So this is the Pixar story process. It's a little bit small, but I'll kind of walk you through it. That second image this is all drawn by Joe Ramft. That's Joe drawing at his table. I don't know if you can read it, but the little calendar behind him says January. And he's working. That third image is him pinning up his storyboards and then stepping back. He's juggling staging and composition and cutting and writing because he's got these screenplay pages, and he needs to do the first visualization of what this is going to look like on the screen. So he's not just a director, he's an actor, he's a set builder. And that sixth image is Joe running back and forth between his desk and his pinning board until it's just right. And then finally, he gets up and he pitches, much like I'm pitching to you here. He pitches to the director, in this case, John Lasseter. And John's sitting there, he's taking it in. Often directors can be steely-eyed, and you don't know how well things have gone until, boom, they get an idea. And once the director gets an idea, then everybody has an idea. Oh, yo, that's great. Not only is Woody a cowboy doll, but he's also like one of those pull strings. What could the pull string say? Oh, it's got Stack in My Boots. And then everybody's just going crazy. And in the end, you're left with a story artist who's lying on the ground in a pile of drawings and notes, and John going, great, I'll see you next Tuesday. And he leaves, and you wake up from this fugue state, and you start again, and a little calendar down there says February, and you start your next deadline. So how do we make this function? How do we make that work? Well, in improv theater, and Craig Howard can attest to this, there's a yes and mentality. We say yes and. We don't say, nah, but. So what that means is when you're in a creative environment, when you're in a room and you're brainstorming and somebody comes up with an idea, even if you don't think it's the right idea, that could lead to the nugget of gold. And there's a reason that person's in the room, and there's a reason they decided to throw that out there. So instead of shutting them down and starting another train of thought, ride with that. Add to it. Why doesn't it work? What little nudge can you give it to help it get in the right direction? This is called the art of plussing. We want to plus people's ideas. Because that person, maybe this isn't their golden idea of the day, but if you shut them down now, they might not put forward that gem that would have been coming in 15 minutes, that next great idea they might have had. So we want to give every idea its day in court. This can be very challenging. Somebody can put forth an idea that doesn't seem right, and you know right away. You just want to slap a judgment on that idea and just like, okay, we're going to waste time talking about that. Let's move on. But it's better for the team if you really give that idea a chance. And okay, well, if we went that way, let's go through the math of where would that take us. Oh, well, you know what? That's not exactly right, but maybe we do need to start exploring this area over here. We want to be rowing as a team. Sometimes people can throw out a great idea. This is actually the tragic thing about where I work, is people throw out great ideas all the time. When I was working on Ratatouille, people would do this amazing animation of Remy when he's pulling Linguini's hair. I don't know how many people have seen the movie. But there's a little rat, and he pulls a chef's hair, and he somehow cooks. It's a long leap of logic. But there's a lot of great Weekend at Bernie's type humor in there with sort of ragdoll physics. And so when you give that to an animator, they go nuts. Okay, there's a rat, and he's controlling this guy. Oh, he could do like a dance, and he could do this thing. So people were turning in this amazing animation that was making us laugh, and the only person not laughing was the director. He's like, no. Cut it out. That's not supposed to be a dance number. All he has to do is reach for that broccoli. The broccoli, buddy, we can do all this great stuff with a puppeteer. No. That's not the point. That would be excellent animation for another film, but we're making this film. The way I always say it is, if you're rowing a boat, you could be going to China or Hawaii. They're both great directions. They're both great destinations. But if two rowers are rowing opposite directions, you're not going to get to either place. So let's decide on a destination and all row together. That's not to say that where you would have loved to go is not great, but this is where we've all decided as a team to head right now. There's a little game you can play to kind of build this with your own students called One Word Story. Probably a lot of you already know this. This is where you get together and you tell a story one word at a time. The easy way to get it started is by getting everybody on the same foot with once upon a time, there, a. I like how everybody was like, wait, you can't expect me a little. I heard little, yeah. But that's great. So that's what you get it started. So, okay, it's kind of like, jump rope. It's like, getting the timing ready and then you jump in. And you can go really far with that. And you learn really quickly that when people are pulling two different directions of the story, it doesn't even make grammatical sense. So the value of failure. We value failure at Pixar. We don't love it, but we appreciate it. This, by the way, is my favorite visual of all time. This is when Sean was talking about me hating computers. This is my life. This is me and computers right here. So you want to create a safe space. People can only be creative when they're relaxed. And how do we do that? Well, we meet failure with humor, not judgment, right? We make a space where we can laugh at ourselves as well as each other and know it's not judgmental. It's taking a step back, being objective, and looking at the silliness of the situation. We know that the key to improving is having better taste than your own skill level. So what does that mean? Well, a lot of high school students are going to feel bad about their own work. Why am I not at this level? They don't even know what they're missing to not be at a professional's level. Well, what that means is that they have good taste. They know that what is good and what is bad. And that is the key skill that you need to improve. The moment you think that you're just as good as anybody else, okay, well then you've successfully plateaued very well and you're not going anywhere. I hope you're very happy with where you are because that's where you're staying. Working at Pixar makes it very easy not to plateau because everybody is better than you. Everybody is the best artist where they came from. You also want to make your students comfortable with sitting with the anxiety of not having a solution. That can be the toughest thing about creativity, is having a problem and being okay with being uncomfortable about not solving it right away. Oftentimes, the quickest solution that comes to your mind is not the most creative. There's a reason it came to your mind quickly. It's probably what anybody would have gone to. Creative people have the willingness to persevere and go, okay, that's one solution. We'll pin that up. That's not going anywhere. We're not going to lose that. Let's think for just 20 more minutes. Is there anything else? And just by pushing that extra bit further, that's where the originality is. That's where like the golden kingdom is, right out there. 3 things. This is another improv game that you can play to get people okay with the idea of failure and just putting themselves out there. This is really simple. You just get in a circle, and you start with one person, and they say what the topic is. 3 names for a James Bond villain. And they turn to the person to the left. That person has to say the first 3 names that come to their mind. Anything is acceptable. There's no wrong answer. So it could be Blofeld, Scarface, Carpet, Head. Okay, carpet head, great. And then everybody says 3 things, and you move on. That person then gets to say 3 substitutions for a hook hand. Okay, lava hand, door hand, chair hand. Okay, 3 things. And it just gets you okay with throwing things out there, getting your mind rolling. And students will not want to stop playing this game. You're going to be like working in your classroom, and you're going to hear 3 things. No more playing 3 things. That's just a warm-up game. This is a great game. To do with failure, one of my favorite quotes is Chuck Jones. Every artist has 10,000 bad drawings in them. It's just a matter of getting them out. Kind of depressing, but a little hopeful. It ain't got to be pretty. The idea is more important than the execution. We work rough at Pixar. You know, we don't care about every drawing being precious. We just want the final product to be great. So that means that it's about the idea that you're pitching, not how you executed it, because there are thousands of drawings that go behind every frame of a Pixar film. And you don't need to see those drawings. They just need to be able to communicate to the rest of the crew. The important thing to think about, at least in what we do, is what is the character feeling and why do they feel that way? In visual arts, it might be, what am I feeling and how can I get the audience to feel that way? It helps create a filter for everything else, every decision to pass through. I teach animation at the Academy of Art University, and I can't tell you, day 1, my co-teacher Paul and I tell our students, we're going to ask you what your character was doing 30 seconds before the scene started, and you will not be able to answer. And they go, that's ridiculous. That's not easy, I'll be able to answer that. But they get so wrapped up in the details of whatever they're animating that 3 weeks in, they're coming across a problem, and we ask, well, what was the character doing 5 minutes ago? He was waiting for a bus? Okay, you just made that up. You know, like, they just don't think about it. So you want people to think about, and for our high schoolers and middle schoolers, this helps build empathy, you know, getting inside the character's shoes. I love watching interviews. I was actually just asking Craig Howard about this. I love watching interviews with people who play villains. Gary Oldman, Alan Rickman. These guys are amazing actors. And in any of these interviews, these people defend their character. This character is the hero. You know, the interviewer will ask Anthony Hopkins about Hannibal Lecter. What's it like playing a monster? He's not a monster. He's misunderstood. It's like playing a defense attorney. You know, if you agree to take that role on, you're the one that has to represent that character. Otherwise, you're going to get a mustache-twirling villain that anybody could play. Well, that goes the same to be true with background characters or anybody that's going to appear on screen. That character, in Monsters University, there are hundreds of background monsters. Well, they don't know they're background monsters. They just know that they're 20 minutes late for scare class. And that's all that's on their mind. So when you're animating them, give it your all, right? A great idea can survive bad polish, but great polish can never save a bad idea. In high school, people get so wrapped up, I know I was this way, of everything being perfect. I got to create the best portfolio or I won't get into school. Well, if you're so worried about getting the shading right on the elbow, you're not going to realize that your composition's bad. And I can't even tell what the pose is supposed to be. So I don't care about the shading on the elbow. The best way to do this is to show early and show often. Get your students comfortable with showing their rough stuff. Solve those solutions early. Get those early mistakes out of the way. The same way every artist has 10,000 bad drawings, every idea has about at least 24 bad iterations that you need to get through first. So just get them out of the way. Because those notes are coming anyway, you might as well stop early on in a dead end than going all the way down. Has anybody seen this? ELI5? Anybody peruse Reddit? This is explain it like I'm 5. This is the best way, and I know a lot of you have had this thing where, you know, a high schooler or a junior higher pitches you an idea, and you're like, whoa, 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 I love that you're into Tolkien and everything, but what are the 5 ninja kingdoms, and why do they need the gems? Like, they have these amazing stories in their mind. Well, okay, that's great. It's great to have that backstory, but explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, number one, you probably don't really understand it to begin with. You don't understand the basics. And number two, it's probably too much to bite off, right? You're biting off more than you can chew. Lastly, this is a quote from Daryl Watson, one of my fellow K9 animators. Your sketchbook is your sword. Okay? you should be encouraging your students to take their sketchbook, or if they're writing, their journal, everywhere they go. Because if you encounter an idea, if something strikes you, and you don't have a way to write that down, or you make an observation about the way somebody's standing in a cafe, and, oh, that's my character, and you can't jot it down or sketch it, you're defenseless. You've got no sword, and the idea has vanquished you, and you'll never capture it quite in the same way again. So your sketchbook is your sword. Can I get a bottle of water? Harrison? Harrison? Let's hear it for Harrison, everybody. My favorite game to play with this is Telephone Pictionary. Has everybody played the game Telephone, right? Where you whisper, sailboat, 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 and by the time it comes around, your mother's fat. Well, that's terrible. Fat as a sailboat? And everybody's played Pictionary, right? Where you have to sketch to communicate. Well, Telephone Pictionary is a combination of the two. What you do is you get in a circle, and everybody has a pad of paper with the number of pages equaling the number of players. So if there's 10 of us, everybody has a pad of 10 pages of paper. Harrison, thanks, man. Let's hear it for Harrison, everybody. So everybody has a pad of paper with the number of pages equaling the players. And everybody just jots down something that they would like to communicate to the group, the same way you would whisper, sailboat. Or maybe it's like cowboys versus Indians. But you just write that down, and you pass the entire pad to the right. So now you get something, it might say Death Star. Okay, cool. You have to flip that to the next blank page, and now you're drawing. Now everybody is drawing. Okay, I'm drawing Death Star, Cynthia's drawing a sailboat, and so on and so forth. And then, when everybody's done drawing, you pass that over, the whole pad over. So now you're getting, what is this? This is like a cat with antlers. Sean, what is this? And so then you have to okay, flip that, okay, and you have to figure out what they were trying to communicate. You're writing down, okay, it had antlers, it was a cat, I think there was a carrot in there. Nervous Rudolph, I don't know. So you write down Nervous Rudolph, you pass that to Cynthia. Cynthia's like, what? And then she's looking over at Sean, so by the end, you get this amazing train of drawing, writing, and you'll see the people that are good at drawing are the most boring people to have in this game. You want the people that are don't know how to draw, and they're lit majors, and they're just doing their best, and in the end, you share what the train of this thought was. But the great thing is, it gets everybody uncomfortable. Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's trying to communicate together. You're all working to fulfill this one idea, and you know at the outset that you're going to fail, and that's going to be the fun part, is the failure, and that's where the humor is going to happen. Frank Thomas, one of the greatest animators of all time, co-author of Illusion of Life, has this quote, observe everything, communicate well, draw, draw, draw. That's what it boils down to. Now he's obviously drawing Tramp here. Be flexible. So the first part of this is trusting the process. A lot of times, we're so fixed on where we need to go that we don't feel like we have time to explore those little side routes. Well, you need to trust the process. If you feel like your team or your students really want to explore this other direction, trust that if it's a bad idea, they will suss it out and they will get back on track. But if it's a great idea, people are laughing. No, they will not know. They will not have that objective. Well, that's where you come in and you have to put the kibosh on it. But if you've built that creative environment where there is that accountability and people feel safe to put out ideas, then the process will work. And they'll either come back around and say, no, that didn't work out because we're all headed in this direction together, and that's not right. Or they'll find, this is gold. We created this whole character that knocks out a scene that we don't need. He'll just give a little line of exposition. It'll be great. Act as if. Act as if is a little bit of an improv mantra. This is Conan O'Brien uses this all the time. This means act as if what you're doing is totally normal. This is a great way to get through the nervousness of, say, public speaking. Conan O'Brien says he uses this when he's interviewing people like Barack Obama, and it's just the situation is too crazy and he can't even realize what's going on. Well, in improv, you act as if that's completely normal. If you're playing Count Dracula in a play and somebody comes into your castle, well, you're Count Dracula. That's pretty normal to you. And so you act as if it's normal. You don't act as if it's a big thing, right? Well, same is true in a classroom. There's going to be a lot of times where computers are crashing. I'm sure we've all had students that didn't hit save, and now it's your responsibility for all the work they've lost. Well, that's normal. That's part of the process. So by getting amped up and getting stressed out, you're not helping things. But by rolling with it and acting as if this is totally normal, this is expected, and how do we solve this, that's the best way to keep things creative, keep things positive. A good idea may not be the right idea. This goes back to flexibility and rowing the boat in the right direction and helping everybody to know that, you know what, thanks for putting out that idea. That's really great. That's not where we're all going, but we're going to write that down, and maybe in a future film, we'll use that for something else. Kill your babies. This is where you turn that back on yourself. And a lot of directors have that moment of like, the whole reason I am directing Lord of the Rings is because I love the character Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil is the greatest character of all time. I love his yellow boots. I love his little house. And then you make the film and you realize there's no room for Tom Bombadil. And as much as you love that character, half of the room doesn't even know what I'm talking about. That's great. Congratulations, you had a life in high school. You may love that character, but that half of the audience does not care. It's not part of Frodo's journey. It's not important. Kill it. And if the film's still broken, congratulations, you can put Tom Bombadil back in. He wasn't what was breaking it. But if suddenly the film gets lighter and everything makes more sense, sorry, Tom Bombadil was the problem. And we're excited that you're happy for him, but there's an audience out there, and the audience is who we're serving. Never waste a good disaster. If you've read Creativity, Inc. from Ed Catmull, this is one of his mantras. Whenever something goes wrong, like thank the heavens that you have a teaching opportunity for everybody. There's a reason it went wrong. People didn't know something. They didn't have the correct procedure. So you can either make it from a disaster to a catastrophe or from a disaster into a learning moment. And at Pixar, we certainly have plenty of learning moments, and those learning moments happen to cost us millions of dollars. But in the long run, they save us more than just money, but they save us, audience participation. And if we had just let that bad idea go into the movie theaters, it would have hurt the brand, or it would have hurt people's trust in us. One of my favorite quotes from Arnold, "Pain is just weakness leaving the body." This is really important to keep in mind because being a teacher, there's a lot of pain. And just know that that's just you getting stronger. I'm not sure if I completely believe this myself, but it's a pleasant thought. I just want to leave that up there. Just look at that face. That's so good. Even to become Arnold Schwarzenegger, you have to at some point have that face. That's amazing. It's Mr. Universe. All right. Chapter 3, educational yet experimental. So I went to CalArts, and one of the great things, so CalArts was started by Walt Disney. He had this idea of combining animators and dancers, actors, musicians, get everybody working together. Then he had a not-so-bright idea of putting animators in cubicles. And then, not only did he think cubicles were a great idea, he thought, you know what, I'm going to install a Disneyland people mover. And people are going to be able to go over the animation cubicles and see what an animator really looks like. Well, if you have any animators or any artists in your classes, and if you've ever visited a visual arts or artistic college, it's not the best thing. This is CalArts in the 1970s. I'm sorry, this is, I didn't want to blow this up anymore because there's probably lewd things going on in the background that I didn't want to be high res. But yeah, CalArts is full of hooligans. I don't know if you can see, but this little kid on the right is bleeding from the mouth. It looks like he has a missing tooth. They're right outside the animation department, so they're probably filming something and he fell on his face. Surely these two are fooling around and wasting time and not getting anywhere in life. Oh wait, no, that's Joe Ranft and Tim Burton. Joe Ranft was the head of story on Lion King, Nightmare Before Christmas, Toy Story. Tim Burton, we know who Tim Burton is. Everybody knows Tim Burton. So there's a value of fooling around. I'll tell you a story. When I was at CalArts, we found out that the school would sponsor clubs. And if you had a club, they would pay for a certain number of materials. And we thought, well, hey, the cubicles need a coffee machine. And there's a wide range of coffee machines. We can get a Mr. Coffee or a Mr. Coffee 5000. If we just have like a coffee club, then we'll get the school to pay for a coffee machine. School agreed to it. We got the fanciest coffee machine that none of us could afford. We gave them the receipt, and before the school reimbursed us, they're like, great, what does a coffee club do? And we're like, well, we're a club about coffee. And like, that's not a thing. what does Coffee Club do? Okay, we have to figure out what Coffee Club does. And we came up with this thing of the 48-hour film festival. Because what were we really using coffee for? To stay up all night and meet deadlines that we had been procrastinating on. So we got everybody together in the animation cubicles, and we said, okay, we're only using this coffee machine. We're going to stay up all night, and we're all going to come up with little random themes, and we're all going to make films in 48 hours. This will be great. We're going to feel good. 48 hours later, we were dragging our dry husks out of the cubicles. We hadn't showered. There was no personal hygiene. But everybody had a film, whatever film that they could mash together in those hours. One of those stories had a raccoon and a blue jay running an AM/PM. That story eventually became the regular show. And what is the little raccoon holding there but a coffee pot? And so that little coffee club, that idea of fooling around and cheating the system, actually made us think outside the box. And we would have never thought of this crazy thing had we not been up for 36 hours straight and just in a delusional other brain space. This is another one of the 48-hour films. And there was something about this, there was no specific character, but that little bear was kind of cool. So my friend Penn kept drawing this little bear, and we'd go to the bathroom, and using a bathroom stall at Cal Arts is the most entertaining experience in the world because there are just like professional level cartoons all over the place. Well, does anybody recognize this little bear from anything? Adventure Time. This eventually became Adventure Time, and now I can't walk into a hot topic without seeing Adventure Time, Coffee Club contraband, and I haven't seen a nickel of this. So what's the science of silliness? Well, and I'll run through this really quickly. What do science and art share? Experimentation. In science, conclusions drawn from experiments are objective and absolute. Art's a bit trickier. Conclusions from art are subjective and open to interpretation. That's where the director comes in. If you do an experiment, usually it's up to the director to decide whether it works or not. If you don't have a strong vision, that's where things can kind of fall apart. The key to that interpretation of the artistic outcome is taste. How does taste develop? Over a wide range of skills and experience. So yeah, your teenagers are hopeless. Just forget I even said that. That actually doesn't help anybody. Chapter 5, you want to form bonds, not cliques. One way to do this is to embrace the project together. This is us working on Brave. Brave went through a really tough path. We replaced a director. It was going over budget. We had pushed the deadline back. I think it was the first time Pixar pushed back a film, and people were just feeling down and out. So when the second wave of animators came on, we decided, you know what? We're going to kilt up, we're going to hire a bagpiper, and we are going to storm the theater. And that's exactly what we did. They were in the middle of dailies. Dailies is something like this, where everybody sits in a theater, and there's a big screen, and you're going over notes, and it's very serious, and the director's calling out, okay, you're going to need to move that guy's arm over here. And at the time, they were animating a bagpiper, so getting that all right. And because it's soundproof, they didn't hear us coming until that door swung open and the theater filled with everybody just jumped. What is going on? In walked a bagpiper, followed by us, about 36 of us covered in war paint, shaking swords and spears. We ran up to the front and we said, "We hear you're making a film!" And our director, Mark Andrews, without missing a beat, answered, "Hey, we are!" And we answered back, "Well, we're here to help you." And it just the morale ever since then was just up. Every Friday was Kilt Friday, which turned into Scotch Friday. And then morale went skyrocketing. But there was a lot of bonding. There was a feeling that, you know what? We're here for you. We will be your second wave. We will pick up the slack. And we will all wear skirts together. This will be great. I can't tell you how many times you went to a urinal and it was just this. That's a bonding experience. Bad movie night. Bad movie night. This is actually a great movie. My friends and I started Bad Movie Night when I genuinely wanted to share this film with them. It was not supposed to be Bad Movie Night. But Bad Movie Night's great. It doesn't have to be a bad movie night. It could be, doing art galleries or some sort of silly art gallery. But Bad Movie Night's great because when you're watching a bad movie, suddenly there's no low guy on the totem pole, right? Suddenly the kid that gets picked on, even in a clique where everybody supposedly belongs, there's like a little mascot that everybody kind of like ostracizes a little bit. Well, when you're watching a bad movie, the bad movie is the guy that we're all picking on, and the movie doesn't care how much you make fun of it. So you can feel free to talk over a movie. You can talk about the movie. You can talk about the characters, which is educational. You can learn from someone else's mistakes. You know, I guarantee you, after seeing a movie like 1987's Masters of the Universe, you're going to get students making the same mistakes, and suddenly you have a cautionary tale to point to. Do you want to be Dolph Lundgren in his Speedos? Do you really want to do that? Because that's where you're headed. No, I don't want to have the he mullet. No, well, then you better head the other direction. Everyone can take turns sharing their favorite bad movie. So this can be a great, like, you know what? This is my little movie that I think is great, but it's really kind of cheesy. Let's watch this. Or like, this is the worst movie I just saw the other day, and it becomes exciting. And it's not about sharing movies that you truly love that you're going to get defensive about. And some bad movies have a lot of good in them. Seriously, Frank Langella's performance as Skeletor is really nuanced, I'm telling you. It's a great Skeletor. Caricature wall. This is, you really have to have a group that is comfortable together, but if they're comfortable enough to do drawings of each other, and they don't need to be mean, but they could just be sketches, that's a great way of bonding and seeing each other in an abstract way. And caricatures are actually a great way to see yourself through other people's eyes, which is its own whole existential, empathetic thing. Hit the road, right? This is a big thing that Sean tries to do, get the students outside of that creative environment. You know, now that you've created such a perfect oasis, kick them out of it and put them in the real world, right? At Pixar, we take research trips. This removes people from their social norms. People that are popular in high school aren't popular down at, over in Scotland or at the Ashland Theatre Festival. You have to re-earn that popularity. Suddenly you're on the road with people who aren't your usual social circle. Everyone is out of their comfort zone and on equal footing. And that shared experience creates a shared perspective, right? Now we're all going through something we haven't been through before, and we're all going to talk about it together. I also would recommend somehow, if there's any way you can do it, limiting the cell phones. Yeah, amen. The best thing about a trip is entertaining each other while extremely bored. If you can get a long road trip, we drove down, or did we fly down to Southern California for the World Animation Marathon? I think we flew. But that flight, we didn't have cell phones back then, and the flight delay and just sitting in the airport, that's where the gold is. That's where people start bonding, where you just start making up games with each other. You're trying to entertain each other, and suddenly you're turning to that person that you wouldn't talk to because there's literally nothing else to do. And people start bonding. How do you know if the road trip worked? Inside jokes. If you start hearing a bunch of inside jokes, don't delve into it. Just respect that that's going on and that the culture is forming. It's like bacteria forming on a petri dish. A really quick story about a research trip. Lilo and Stitch was originally supposed to take place in Nebraska, which makes sense because, crop circles, aliens, until the director, Chris Sanders, learned that they were going to be taking a research trip to Nebraska. And he's like, what? Nebraska? No, Hawaii. The story takes place in Hawaii. And so they went to Hawaii, and are you sure Hawaii? Yeah, Hawaii, aliens. It's a big thing. Big thing, Hawaiian aliens. Yeah. That is the only reason that film takes place in Hawaii. And don't they look happy? That's the co-director, Dean DuBois. And there you go. And it was wonderful, and it did happen to be the right decision of the film, and it wasn't your typical first solution. Oh, an alien film, yeah, crop circles, Area 51. No, let's keep thinking. Hawaii, that could be kind of weird. Well, they're on an island, so the alien doesn't have anywhere to go. That actually makes sense. Sip the Mai Tai. You can't always go to the destination where your story takes place. WALL-E is probably the most beautiful Pixar film out there. We couldn't all go to space. So everybody getting on this film was like, oh, I want to be on WALL-E. That's all me in the research trips. We're going to go to NASA. It's going to be great. No, we went to the junkyard. No, that was, it was more about Act 1 focus of the ruined planet, ruined lifeless planet. But you don't have to go to the junkyard. You don't have to go to Scotland. Sean's class was working on a film about sea lions, and we just took them to the aquarium. We're sketching the sea lions. And we saw that one of the things that came out of this research trip that was kind of cool we were noticing these yoga poses that the sea lions were hitting. Like, oh my gosh, they're just like hitting these poses. Are they stretching? But it didn't look like they were stretching. It looked like they were just hanging out. And as an animator, your job is to feel what that feels like in your own body. So we thought, okay, let's get these kids in a yoga class. And so we got this great sort of bonding experience that came from the research trip. We didn't go to the aquarium going, you know what? We've got to learn about yoga. Let's go to the aquarium. But we just followed, we trusted the process, and we followed where it led us, and came out with this great, weird way of relating to sea lions. The dilemma of deadlines. I'm gonna speed up. I know everybody has time. There's some dancers that are in traffic, so I'm just stretching out till the dancers show up. The dilemma of deadlines. How do you handle deadlines with high school students? Sean's rolling his eyes at me because I never met a deadline in high school. My favorite quote about deadlines is, I don't know who it's attributed to, but I'm going to say George R.R. Martin. You know what my favorite thing about deadlines is? The whooshing sound they make as they go flying by. Illustrated by the shadow of a dragon right there. Well, this is where we take all that lovely things I've been saying about creativity, and we just shut the door on that, and we transition from an open mode of thinking to a closed critical mode, which is equally valuable. In an open mode, you are creating, you're laughing, you're exploring, there's a lot of spontaneity, and ideally, you've trained your students to be coming up with ideas on the fly and constantly plussing things. Well, when a deadline is looming, that is the time when you don't want to be coming up with new ideas, and you need to be animating. And Shirley over here needs to be in ink and color, and Eric has a render machine that needs to be rendering because it's going to take, 18 hours per frame, and we've only got a week and a half to finish this project. That's when you want to switch to the closed mode. It sounds like closed-minded, but it's not. This little visual right here is from the Ward Kimball short, Reason and Emotion. Right here we have reason driving, and there is time when creativity does need to take a back seat to execution, right? In a closed mode, you are more committed. There might be some great ideas that are popping up, but you need to just give your idea that you've all settled on, it's fair go, and just execute it. And after it's executed, you also don't want to wait for perfection. There might be better ideas out there, but those ideas are never going to be completed. And would you rather have an uncompleted amazing idea or a B+ that gets out there in the world and is actually seen by people? So after you finish an iteration or you meet your deadline, you put up your storyboards or your scene, what have you, or your artwork, then you can step back, and when you're looking at it, that's when you want to be able to revert back to the open mind and take your criticism with an open mind in that creative sort of mind state. So keep an open mind when accepting critique and addressing notes. At Pixar, we always talk about the spirit of the note. It's hard, even if you get high schoolers that are good with accepting notes and criticisms, often they're going to want to toe the letter of the line, and they're not going to understand the spirit of what you're trying to tell them. I'll go through this really quickly. One of the things that can help you with deadlines is having a production team or somebody that's outside of the creative process. We call them the prod staff. They're the real heroes of Pixar. Their whole job is prioritization, right? Somebody might want to just love getting caught up in the details of the background of a scene, but they need to be told, look, nobody's going to see that. So just do it as quickly as you can. Let's move on to the things that matter. That way you're not wasting people's time, and they're not going to be hurt when their character that they spent a weekend on is hardly even seen. Their job is probably one of their most important jobs is when there's a meeting, kicking off the meeting, stating what the objectives are of that meeting, so setting the tone, we're all on the same foot, and then wrapping up that meeting and saying, okay, well, we all decided on this, this, and this, so that everybody comes away from that meeting with the same exact information. They also perform artist reviews. This is a great way, if you have students and they haven't been listening to what you've been saying, peer review. They're definitely going to listen to their peers who are upset with them. And the prod staff super weapon, this is a usable once only. You can only use this once per group per year, is the false deadline. Everybody knows this. This is probably not anything new to you guys, but just giving them that built-in buffer zone because you know that they're probably going to need that extra time to wrap things up. At Cal Arts, we got a false deadline every year, and we fell for it every year. Oh my gosh, my film's not done, my film's not done. And then the Cal Arts, our Dean of School and Video. Are we time? Okay. I'll just wrap through this real quick. So seriously, how do we make this thing function? So no time? All right, so that's it for now. No, I'm just kidding. So really quick, speaking of which, is the secret ingredient is time, okay? You can't rush this stuff. The environment is not going to get created overnight. It needs to be authentic. The students need to feel like they are contributing and you're not pushing this environment on them. Groups of people need time to gel, so you have to be comfortable with the fact that they're not there yet and that they're not gelling. Also, you should know that you're not going to see the fruits of any of this labor. A lot of these people are only going to be able to put what they're learning into effect long after they leave your classroom, right? The only upside of that is they will not see the fruits of their labor either. The software that me and my friends worked so hard to earn for Sean's class, we never got to use. And they got to stroll into class with these lovely computers and things like that. But they also got a little bit of a legacy of people to look towards. So I know that you guys are a bunch of teachers, so this is my works cited for my essay. So these are things to check out. Do Schools Kill Creativity? It's a TED Talk by Ken Robinson. A lecture on creativity. Just look this up on YouTube. This is a lecture from John Cleese. And Creativity, Inc. by Ed Catmull. All right, thanks very much, and have a great rest of your conference.